So at the moment our paddles are able to go up and down above the screen, which is obviously not what we want to do. So we want to make sure that our paddles are constrained to being stuck within our two walls. And the way we're going to do that is basically just by setting up an upper limit of how high the paddles are allowed to go to and a lower limit of how low the paddles are allowed to go to. So to do that, we're going to create two objects here. We're going to create one called upper limit and another called lower limit, like that. I'm going to set it so both of these are on the 0 position on the x-axis, and then we're going to adjust where is the top that they can go to. So to adjust how high they can go, let's manually move around the paddles to see where's the best place for it. So this paddle, we want it to go up pretty high. We don't want it to touch against the wall, but what we want to do is make sure that there's not enough space that the ball can get through between the paddle and the wall. So if we put the paddle right here, we can see that at this position it's high enough that we can't let it go any higher than that. And the position it's at is at 3.78 on the y-axis. So on the upper limit now, we can go over to that and set it so that the upper limit object is at position 3.78. And we can do the same for the moving down on the y-axis. We should be able to put it at minus 3.78, should give us the exact same thing. As you can see, yes it has. So then on our lower limit, we're going to set the y position of that to be minus 3.78. Okay, so let's reset our paddle back to its original position because we don't want it to be starting off down there. And then we're going to go into our paddle controller script, which I have still open here. And basically all we're going to do is add a new check into our update loop here and check basically if the position of the paddle is too high or too low. So we're going to say if the transform.position.y of our object is greater than the position of, say, the upper limit object. Now if we're going to check if we're higher than the position of the upper limit object, we need to make a reference to that object. So we'll go back up to where our variables are here, and we're going to create a public transform, because we only care about the transform position of those objects within the world. So we'll say public transform upper limit, and we'll also create a public transform for lower limit. So then down here, what we can say is if the y position of our paddle is greater than the upper limit dot position dot y. So if we are higher than the highest point that we want to go to, then we just want to reset our current transform position. So our current transform dot position, we want to reset that to be a new vector tree. Again, as before with these paddles, we don't want to make any changes on the x-axis, so we'll just leave it at transform dot position dot y, or sorry, dot x. And then on the y-axis, we want to make sure it doesn't go above our upper limit. So if it has gone above our upper limit, we want to say, okay, no, you've gone too high, so you will reset back to be what the upper limit is. So we'll say upper limit dot position dot y. And then we don't want to make any changes on the z-axis either, so we'll say transform dot position dot z. And that's basically how we'll check and reset our transform position so that it doesn't go too high. So we'll do the exact same thing on our lower limit. So we'll say else if transform, nope, not spelling things right, transform dot position dot y this time is less than lower limit dot position dot y. So basically if our paddles now have gone too low, then we'll use the same bit of code that we had here. So we'll just copy this like that, paste it in there, and instead of setting it back to be at the upper limit position, we'll set it back to be at the lower limit position. So we'll save this, go back into the game. Now that we've created those variables, we'll obviously need to hook them up properly on our script. So we'll go to our paddle here, and we're going to see an important aspect of prefabs in operation here as well. So we have our upper limit, which we'll set to be the upper limit object, and we have the lower limit, which we'll set to be the lower limit object. Now, because this is a prefab, and we would ideally like to be able to apply that to the other prefab object, but because we're making specific references to objects within a scene, they won't carry over to the other object. So if I hit apply here, like that, you can see normally when we hit apply, any changes we've made will they'll appear as bold at first, but then when we hit apply, they'll go back to being the normal size. But because these are references to objects within a specific scene, they can't be applied to the prefab. So if we go over to our other paddle, we'll see that that's now still empty. And if we go to our prefab object, we'll see that it's still empty as well in our prefab itself. So it's important to remember that if you create a prefab object that will be making references to specific objects within a scene, when you import them into a new scene, that you have to set these things back up again on the specific object. So it won't carry over to the prefab, it's only specifically on this object within the world. So now on paddle 1, which is our player 2 paddle, we need to hook those up as well. So our upper limit can be there and our lower limit can be there. So now if we hit play, we should be able to see our new limiting in action. So now if I move up, I'm still holding up, but our objects now can't go too high and they can't go too low. So perfect. Now we can constrain our paddles to being stuck on the screen, but at the moment they still keep going up and down the exact same. So let's make this game a little bit more interesting and make it so that each paddle is controllable individually.